Have you ever wondered what mysteries are hidden in one of the most haunting ghost towns on the planet? From intriguing reports of mutated dogs to the enigmatic Red Forest, discover the 20 most fascinating and bizarre findings ever made in Chernobyl. Get ready to uncover the secrets of a place that continues to captivate and terrify the entire world. But before we begin, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. 20. The Community of Survivors. The Chernobyl disaster is the most tragic nuclear incident in the world. On April 27, 1986, 45 residents were evacuated from the area, and in the following month, another 116 people were displaced from their homes. Among them, some unofficially returned and decided to stay in the contaminated area, proof of the indomitable human spirit. This led to the construction of Slavutich, a city built for the survivors of the Chernobyl disaster. In 1988, just 2 years after the disaster, Slavutich was built 31 miles, 50 kilometers from Chernobyl. It became the last city constructed by the Soviet Union and is today the youngest city in Ukraine. Architects from cities across 8 Soviet republics collaborated to design the city, with each contributing their unique ideas. This resulted in districts inspired by their respective cities, including a district of Vilnius, one of Riga, and even one of Tbilisi. Before founding the city, a layer of nearly 7 feet, 2 meters, of uncontaminated soil was added to ensure the area was safe from radiation. No building in Slavutich exceeds 5 stories, and lush trees and pine forests are scattered throughout. Initially, the city was envisioned as a paradise, a refuge. In fact, it once boasted the highest birth rate in Ukraine, but its golden era was short-lived. If you were to visit the city today, you would see its expansive central square, a site intended to house a research center. However, this never materialized after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The city faced an economic downturn. Its inhabitants embarked on one project after another, hoping the next would revitalize their home. Despite its aspirations as a utopia, the city didn't fully live up to its promise. Today, Slavutich continues to strive for a brighter future, holding on to the hope that better days lie ahead. 19. Radiation-feeding fungi. Humans aren't the only ones who persevere through difficult times. Nature continues to thrive, despite humanity's atrocities. This incredible discovery illustrates that point. In 2007, just 21 years after the nuclear disaster, Chernobyl was still largely devoid of life. Yet scientists discovered various strains of fungi thriving in the highly radioactive ruins of the reactor. Somehow these organisms survived and even flourished in an extremely radioactive environment. The secret lies in melanin, the same pigment that gives color to human skin. Researchers found that these fungi use melanin to absorb gamma radiation and convert it into energy through a process known as radiosynthesis, similar to photosynthesis but using deadly radiation instead of sunlight. This adaptation not only allows the fungi to survive, but also to grow faster in radioactive areas. In fact, scientists observed that these fungi gravitate toward the most radioactive spots within Chernobyl's exclusion zone. This discovery has led researchers to hope that these fungi could benefit humanity. NASA has been studying these fungi, envisioning their use in protecting astronauts from cosmic radiation during long space missions, or even in future Mars colonies. In 2018, a small sample of these fungi was sent to the International Space Station, and the results were promising. They could potentially serve as a natural shield against radiation for space travelers. 18. The Mutant Dogs of Chernobyl. Nearly 4 decades after the Chernobyl disaster, one group of survivors is thriving: the dogs of Chernobyl. Somehow, these animals have managed to survive and continue living in one of the most radioactive places on Earth. To do so, they've had to adapt. And researchers have discovered that these dogs are now genetically distinct from other dog populations. But how did this happen? When the Chernobyl reactor exploded in 1986, thousands of people were forced to evacuate, leaving their pets behind. While many dogs were euthanized out of fear of radioactive contamination, some survived and formed feral populations within the exclusion zone. These dogs now live in a hostile, radioactive environment that few animals have experienced for such a prolonged period. This unique scenario provides scientists with an opportunity to study the effects of chronic radiation exposure on a large mammal population. Dogs living near the nuclear plant within the exclusion zone display genetic markers that differentiate them from other populations. These genetic distinctions may result from prolonged radiation exposure, environmental isolation, or a combination of both. Although their genetic diversity is lower than that of other wild dogs in Ukraine, these animals have survived for generations in an environment where few expected them to thrive. Scientists hope that studying these dogs will not only shed light on how radiation affects animals, but also offer insights into its effects on humans. Since dogs share similar environments and diets with humans, genetic changes in the Chernobyl dog population could help us better understand the consequences of prolonged radiation exposure. 17. The first post-disaster product. This bottle holds a unique vodka that even the most passionate enthusiasts might hesitate to try. Atomic vodka is made from rye and water sourced directly from none other than the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Despite its origin, consumers can rest assured that it is not radioactive. What makes this vodka special is the fact that it is the first consumer product to emerge from the area since the nuclear disaster of 1986. The process of making this vodka is fascinating. Scientists from the UK and Ukraine took slightly radiation-contaminated rye and distilled it, producing a completely safe vodka. According to rigorous tests conducted by experts at the University of Southampton, the vodka itself is described as somewhat like a homemade spirit, with a flavor profile more aligned with traditional Ukrainian distillation methods. The project, led by Jim Smith of the University of Portsmouth, has a deeper mission beyond vodka production. The Chernobyl Spirit Company aims to revitalize the local economy and support communities still living near the exclusion zone. 16. A radioactive piece of death. Deep within the remains of Chernobyl's reactor. Number 4 lies one of the most harrowing relics of the 1986 nuclear disaster, the elephant's foot. This massive structure, resembling a pile of lava, was formed when the reactor melted down, combining molten nuclear fuel, concrete, and other materials into a deadly mixture known as corium. This chemical combination is extremely lethal and has only occurred 5 times in history. The elephant's foot is one of the deadliest of these formations. At the time of its formation, it was so radioactive that just 30 seconds of exposure could make a person dizzy, and 5 minutes could be fatal within days. Initially, the elephant's foot emitted around 10 roentgens per hour, enough radiation to kill someone in mere minutes. To put it in perspective, being near it for 1 hour was equivalent to receiving over 4.5 million chest X-rays simultaneously, even from a considerable distance. This enormous corium mass, roughly the size of a human, was a lethal force requiring extreme caution just to photograph. Despite its terrifying lethality, the elephant's foot was not entirely composed of nuclear fuel. Most of it was a mix of concrete, sand, and other reactor materials that melted during the accident. Over time, radiation levels have decreased, but the site remains dangerous. Researchers now study the corium to better understand nuclear accidents and how to prevent them. They have even created lab replicas of the elephant's foot to safely investigate the unique properties of this toxic material. 15. Worms with superpowers. Scientists from New York University have been studying worms living near Chernobyl's exclusion zone, and their findings are astonishing. Deep within the radioactive soil of Chernobyl, there are worms with unique abilities, not the kind you might expect. Somehow, despite living in radioactive soil and burrowing through it day after day, the genomes of these nematodes remain remarkably intact. This means they are naturally resistant to radiation, having developed resilience over time. The rapid reproduction of these worms, which allows them to go through dozens of generations in a short period, has given scientists a unique window into their evolutionary adaptations. While other animals in the area have shown signs of genetic mutations, these worms appear to have developed a remarkable ability to protect and repair their genetic material. Currently, these seemingly insignificant creatures are intriguing researchers who hope to learn from them how humans might better survive radioactivity. 14. Chernobyl's mutant wolves immune to cancer. In addition to dogs, wolves also roam Chernobyl, and like their domestic relatives, they've developed extraordinary abilities that help them survive in a radioactive environment. Resistance to cancer? That's right. After being exposed to high levels of radiation for nearly 4 decades, these wolves appear to have developed genetic mutations that protect them from developing cancer. Scientists tracking the wolves with GPS collars noticed for the first time how remarkably these animals have adapted. Researchers believe that the wolves' immune systems have adjusted in a manner similar to cancer patients undergoing radiation therapy. Their immune responses seem to fend off DNA damage that would typically lead to cancer in other species. These wolves live in an environment where radiation levels are 6 times higher than what is considered safe for humans. Yet, they appear to thrive and show no significant signs of health deterioration. A genetic analysis revealed mutations in the wolves' DNA that may offer a form of cancer resistance. This breakthrough could have far-reaching implications for cancer research in humans. If wolves can adapt in such a way, this research might lead us to discover how humanity could achieve similar resilience. 13. The sarcophagus and the world's largest mobile land structure. In Chernobyl, there is a sarcophagus, but it looks nothing like the ones in Egypt. Rather than a relic left by an ancient civilization, this sarcophagus is humanity's last hope of containing a deadly mistake. The design of this structure began on May 20th, 1986, just 24 days after the disaster. Its construction, however, took 206 days. From June to late November of that year, workers buried 200 tons of lava-like radioactive corium, 30 tons of highly contaminated dust, and 16 tons of uranium and plutonium. The construction was challenging, with workers racing against time, and the installation was arduous. Years later, the structure required repairs, but reinforcing it was difficult. So, a new safety enclosure was built. Unlike the original sarcophagus, this new enclosure took 9 years to construct, with a budget equivalent to $2.6 billion in today's dollars. Standing at approximately 384 feet tall, 528 feet long, and 820 feet wide, the new protective layer is the largest movable land structure in the world. It was built in a clean area and slid over the reactor in 2016 using a complex hydraulic system that moved it a distance of 1,050 feet. 12. Radioactivity still contaminates milk. Nearly 100 miles, 160 kilometers, from Chernobyl, almost 40 years after the catastrophe, radioactive contamination continues to persist in surprising ways. Today, the consequences of the disaster still linger in milk production. Researchers have discovered that cow's milk remains contaminated, even from cows living more than 100 miles away from the explosion site. Field studies conducted in Ukraine's Rivne region revealed that samples of milk from local farms contain levels of radioactive cesium up to 5 times higher than the safe limit for adults and 12 times higher than the limit for children. The radiation levels, primarily from cesium-137, continue to accumulate in the soil and vegetation consumed by cows, which subsequently passes into the milk. In some settlements in this region, pollution levels reach up to 500 becquerels per liter, while government safety limits are 40 becquerels per liter for adults, with even stricter thresholds for children. This poses a significant health risk, especially for children, who are the primary consumers of local milk. 11. An unexpected otter. Despite persistent pollution, life continues to flourish in Chernobyl, as evidenced by the presence of an unexpected resident, a healthy otter. Typically seen in aquatic environments, this otter is a particularly hopeful sign, suggesting that the area's waterways have regenerated to a state capable of supporting life. Although radiation levels remain concerning in some parts of the region, much of the pollution has diminished over the decades, allowing species to return in significant numbers. With this otter happily feeding on fish in waters near the exclusion zone, scientists hope that one day Chernobyl can return to being the thriving ecosystem it once was. 10. Chernobyl welcomes 10 tourists a year. On April 26th, the anniversary of the explosion, Chernobyl marks 38 years since the tragedy, and it has seen a rise in tourism, attracting up to 10 visitors a year. The exclusion zone, covering 112 square miles, includes the abandoned city of Pripyat. Visitors can witness residential buildings overtaken by nature, a desolate amusement park with its iconic Ferris wheel, and even wildlife that has thrived in the absence of human activity. Tourists from around the world visit Chernobyl, many drawn by dark tourism. This type of travel, also known as thanatourism, involves visiting places historically associated with death and tragedy. Visiting such places demands respect. While dark tourism might be misunderstood as morbid curiosity, visitors to places like Chernobyl or the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan often seek a somber understanding of history. However, due to recent incidents, Chernobyl has become hazardous again, with the area now littered with landmines and potentially dangerous explosives. 9. Chernobyl's shadow, the Duga radar. Deep within Chernobyl lies a woodpecker, but not the kind you're imagining. The Duga radar, also known as the Russian woodpecker, is a massive structure standing over 490 feet tall and stretching for more than 72 feet. This colossal radar system, extending beyond the horizon, is a remnant of the Soviet Union's ambition. The gigantic structure was built to detect intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, approaching from more than 1,000 miles away. Why is this structure so close to Chernobyl? The answer is simple. It needed power from the nuclear plant. A structure this enormous required vast amounts of energy, much of which was supplied by the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. When operational, its sheer size was so imposing that it became infamous for interrupting and interfering with radio communications worldwide. The radar's transmissions created a repetitive tapping sound, earning it the nickname Russian woodpecker. Radio operators around the world were baffled by the strange noise that disrupted signals from Europe to North America. Despite numerous conspiracy theories surrounding its purpose, it was eventually revealed to be part of the Soviet Union's missile defense system. The Duga radar operated from 1976 until the late 1980s, shortly after the Chernobyl disaster, when the site was abandoned. 8. The abandoned boats of Chernobyl. In the eerie waters near Chernobyl lies a fleet of rusting boats. This ship graveyard can be found in the stagnant waters of the Pripyat River, where they were abandoned following the 1986 disaster. These boats, once used for transportation, are now deemed useless. Some were salvaged and dismantled, while others were left stranded in the wrong place at the wrong time and became heavily contaminated by radiation. Others were intentionally used during cleanup efforts but were abandoned once their work was completed. Over the years, these boats have slowly deteriorated, their rusting hulls sinking into the murky waters of the river. Some of these vessels were even used to transport radioactive waste, sealing their fate as permanent residents of the exclusion zone. 7. Crops grown in Chernobyl. 3 decades after the disaster, researchers returned to Chernobyl to study plants grown near the exclusion zone, confirming their hypotheses. Radioactivity in the area has lingered for years. Crops like wheat, barley, rye, and oats have continued to absorb radioactive isotopes, such as cesium-137 and strontium-90, released during the 1986 explosion. These isotopes remain at dangerous levels in various food products, including grains, milk, and mushrooms grown in regions near Chernobyl. This remains a persistent issue because plants absorb these isotopes easily, especially in the forests surrounding the exclusion zone. For local communities, the problem is exacerbated by difficult economic conditions, forcing many to rely on locally grown food. Despite the risks, some residents still consume milk and bread contaminated with radioactivity. Unlike simple bacteria, which can be killed with heat, cooking crops does not eliminate radioactivity. Unfortunately, with monitoring programs reduced in 2013, many residents near Chernobyl remain unaware if their food is truly safe to eat. 6. The Red Forest. Although it offers an impressive view from above and afar, the Red Forest, located just a few kilometers from the Chernobyl nuclear plant, is one of the most lethal places on Earth, ranking among the most radioactive areas on the planet. Since the disaster, the trees in the area, which died almost instantly from radiation levels 1,200 times higher than what a human could tolerate, were cut down and buried as part of cleanup efforts. However, as life began to regrow in the area, pine trees with reddish-brown leaves replaced the once lush vegetation. Despite attempts to contain the radiation, the forest continues to be a source of contamination, with radiation levels ranging from 1 to 10 millisieverts per hour, far exceeding the dose tolerable by humans. To this day, the Red Forest remains a significant hazard. Wildfires, such as the one in 2015, can release radioactive particles trapped in the vegetation, spreading contamination far beyond the exclusion zone. 5. The haunting Café Pripyat. Overlooking the surroundings of Pripyat, this picturesque café, still adorned with stained glass, was once one of the most popular spots for the residents of Chernobyl. Café Pripyat, also known as the Dish by locals, used to be a leisure destination where residents gathered to enjoy a drink, relax on the sunlit terrace, or take summer sailing trips on the nearby lake. With its distinctive circular design and open terrace, the cafe offered stunning views of the lake, making it a favorite spot for picnics and socializing. One of its most remarkable features was its large, ornate stained glass windows depicting vibrant, abstract figures. Remnants of these colorful panes can still be seen today, though broken and weathered by the elements. Unfortunately, the disaster struck, and soon after, the cafe, along with the rest of the area, was abandoned. Now nature is slowly reclaiming the site. Trees sprout from cracks in the concrete, and the shoreline is covered in vegetation, blending the once bustling cafe into the eerily tranquil landscape of the exclusion zone. 4. Brown bear, spotted in Chernobyl. For the first time in over a century, brown bears have been seen in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Captured on cameras set up by researchers monitoring local wildlife, these creatures demonstrate that life is gradually returning to the area. It seems that the absence of human activity over the past 3 decades has inadvertently turned the area into a wildlife sanctuary. Let's hope this trend continues into the future. 3. Chernobyl's mutant frogs. Dogs, wolves, mushrooms. It seems that almost every living creature in Chernobyl has developed some kind of mutation. This includes frogs, particularly the eastern tree frogs. Typically, these frogs exhibit a bright green coloration. However, researchers have discovered that those living in Chernobyl have evolved to become much darker, with some even turning completely black. Similar to the fungi found in the area, these frogs use melanin to protect themselves from radiation. This pigment can absorb and dissipate radiation, helping shield the frogs from the harmful effects of their radioactive environment. It is likely that this process of natural selection began shortly after the 1986 disaster, as frogs with darker skin were better able to resist radiation and pass their traits to future generations. 2. The children of parents exposed to Chernobyl radiation. In a significant advancement in radiation research, scientists have confirmed that the children of parents exposed to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster do not carry excessive genetic mutations. This finding comes after years of concern that radiation exposure from the 1986 accident could bring harmful genetic changes to the next generation. To address these concerns, researchers sequenced the genomes of 130 children born to parents who were directly exposed to radiation, either through cleanup efforts or due to their proximity to the explosion. They discovered that the number of mutations in these children was no higher than in the general population, which is reassuring news, especially for those affected by other nuclear incidents, such as the 2011 Fukushima disaster. The results suggest that, while radiation can cause health problems like cancer in people directly exposed, it does not appear to cause hereditary genetic damage. 1. The man behind Chernobyl's nuclear meltdown. Behind the nuclear meltdown of Chernobyl, Anatoly Dyatlov, one of the central figures of the disaster, remains one of the most controversial personalities. On that fateful night in 1986, Dyatlov was the chief engineer and deputy supervisor of Reactor 4, where a routine safety test resulted in the worst nuclear accident in history. Known for his authoritarian management style and technical expertise, Dyatlov made several critical decisions that contributed to the reactor's explosion. It is said that on the night of the disaster, Dyatlov proceeded with the ill-fated safety test, disregarding multiple safety protocols. Despite being warned about the reactor's instability, Dyatlov's insistence on completing the test caused a dangerous power reduction in the reaction process. When he finally pressed the emergency shutdown button, a catastrophic explosion occurred due to a design flaw in the reactor's control rods. In the moments following the explosion, Dyatlov ordered operators to manually lower the control rods, further exposing them to radiation. He refused to believe the reactor had exploded until it was too late. However, he was not the only one to blame. Many argue that the Soviet system itself, with its emphasis on meeting production goals and the flawed design of the RBMK reactor, also played a significant role in the disaster. Dyatlov himself claimed that while he made mistakes, the accident was the result of systemic failures. Despite receiving a lethal dose of radiation, Dyatlov survived for nearly a decade after the disaster. Although he suffered severe health problems, he died in 1995. maintaining that the true fault lay with the political and scientific institutions of the Soviet Union. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster is just one of many dark chapters in history, at least for us. For those who lived through this disaster, it is a dark part of their lives. If you know of other dark chapters in history that you would like to discuss, feel free to share them in the comments below. Until next time, take care.